All right, let's take a look at the practice test. For the first problem, we're asked to find AB. All right, so coming down here, this is our matrix A, and then this is our matrix B. The first question you would ask yourself if you're doing matrix multiplication is, can you perform the operation? So is it possible to find this product matrix AB? Well, in order for it to be possible, the number of columns from the first matrix, which is A, that's the matrix on the left, has to match up with the number of rows from the second matrix. So this is the matrix B, this is the one on the right. In this case with A, you have a 2 by 3 matrix. So 2 rows and 3 columns. So this is a 2 by 3. And then for B, you have a 3 by 2. So 3 rows and 2 columns. So this right here is a 3 by 2. So just look at what's on the inside. So right here, this is the columns for A, and then this is the rows for B. Does that match? Yes, it does. So that means we can perform the operation. And if you want to know the order of your product matrix AB, where you're going on the outside. So this right here is the number of rows, and then this right here is the number of columns. So it's going to be a 2 by 2 matrix in terms of this product matrix AB. Okay, so once we come down here, it's pretty straightforward. Remember, we're always working with the rows from the first matrix or the leftmost matrix, and the columns from the second matrix or the rightmost matrix. All you have to do once you know that this is a 2 by 2, just set up some empty spots there, and you can go through and fill them in. Remember, like I did in the lesson, you can go through and say, this position right here would be row 1, column 1. This would be row 1, column 2. This would be row 2, column 1. And this would be row 2, column 2. So all you have to do is look at that element right there in row 1, column 1, and just say that I'm going to work with this row and then this column. So row 1 times column 1. That's all you're doing. Let me erase this. We'll just go through and do the multiplication. Remember, how you do it is you're going to multiply your corresponding elements, and then you're going to sum those products. So in other words, this is the first element in that first row, and this is the first element in that first column. So you're going to multiply those guys together. So -5 times -3, that's going to be right there. That's going to end up being positive 15. Then let me change my color. You're then going to go to the second element in that first row. So this is 5 right here. You're going to multiply that by the second element in the first column. So that's this 2 right here. So you get 5 times 2, and that's going to give me 10. Then lastly, you're going to move on to this right here. So this is the third and final element in that first row, and you're going to multiply it by the third and final element in that first column. So -4 times 6, that's going to be this guy right here. That's going to give me this -24. So once you've found all those products, so 15, 10, and then -24, just add them together. So 15 plus 10 is 25. 25 minus 24 is going to be 1. So this right here is going to be put in right there in row 1, column 1 for your product matrix AB. So just put a 1 right there. And now we're going to move on to this position right here. Let me just do this on the next page here. I already have everything set up for us. So now if you look at this, again, this is row 1, column 2. So I'm working with the first row, so right here, and I'm working with the second column. So I'm just doing the same thing. So let's go through and say that this guy right here, which is the first element from that row, is going to get multiplied by this guy right here. So the first element from that column. So you have -5 times -6. That's going to be positive 30. Then we're going to move down. We're going to have 5 times 3. So that's 5 times 3 right there. That gives me 15. Then we're just going to move down. So we're going to have -4 times 1. So here we have our -4 times 1. So that's -4. So we have 30 plus 15, which is 45, and then -4, which is going to be 41. Again, all we're going to do is we're going to take this right here, and we're going to put it in right there. So I'm going to get a 41 right there. Okay, continuing. Now we want this one right here. So this is going to be row 2, and then we're in column 1. So again, coming over here, now I don't want to be in the first row. I want to be in the second row, and then I want to be in the first column. So this guy right there. So let's go through and do these. So I'm going to go -2 times -3. Again, the first element from this second row multiplied by the first element from this first column. So you're going to get -2 times -3, and that's going to give me positive 6. Then we're just going to move down. So we have this 2 times 2, so that's going to be right there, and that's going to be 4. And then once again, we're going to move down. We're going to have 2 times 6, so that's going to be right here. 2 times 6 is going to be 12. And then just find the sum of the products. So 6 plus 4 is 10. 10 plus 12 is 22. So once again, we're going to take this 22 right here, and we're going to plug it in right there. So let me erase this, and I'm just going to put a 22 right there. All right, and coming down, we just have one more of these to do. So this right here is going to be your row 2 and then column 2. So my row 2 is right here, and my column 2 is right here. So we'll go through and do -2 times -6. So remember, the first element from the second row multiplied by the first element from the second column. So negative 2 times negative 6 is going to be 12. All right, moving down, we're going to have 2 times 3. So here's your 2 times 3. That's going to give me 6. And then moving down again, we're going to have 2 times 1. So here's your 2 times 1, and that's going to give me 2. So now we're just going to add these guys together. So 12 plus 6 is 18. 18 plus 2 is 20. So once again, you're going to take this guy right here, and you're going to plug it in right there. So this right here is going to be your 20. And so coming down here, this right here is going to be your product matrix AB. So you have a 1 and then a 41 in the first row, and then a 22 and then a 20 in the second row. All right, for problem 2, we're asked to find AB. All right, so coming down here, our matrix A is a 2 by 3 matrix, so 2 rows and 3 columns. Our matrix B is also a 2 by 3 matrix, so 2 rows and 3 columns. So remember that if you're trying to find this product matrix AB, the number of columns from the first matrix must be equal to the number of rows from your second matrix. So the number of columns from A needs to be equal to the number of rows from B, and here that's not the case. If you look, you can see that since A is a 2 by 3 matrix, 2 rows and 3 columns, and B is also a 2 by 3 matrix, again 2 rows and 3 columns, the product AB doesn't exist. The number of columns in matrix A, again matrix A has 3 columns, must match the number of rows in B. Matrix B has 2 rows. And again, a lot of people ask the reason for this. Why do you need the number of columns in the first matrix to match up with the number of rows in the second matrix? I'll just show you real quick on this problem because I think it's a little bit interesting. Since we're working with rows from the first matrix and columns from the second matrix, remember you have to be able to have corresponding elements to multiply together. So if I started with, let's just say row 1 times column 1, just to show you it's not going to work, let's say you did 4 times negative 4. So that's the first element in row 1 times the first element in column 1. So 4 times negative 4. Then plus, let's say I did negative 12 and then times negative 3. So negative 12 and then times negative 3. Well, what happens when I get to this element right here, this 1? Well, I don't have anything to match up with it in my matrix B, right? So this right here, if you count the number of elements in each row in your matrix A, you have 1, 2, 3 elements. And I can also get that by counting the number of columns. Then if I go through and I say, well, how many elements are going to be in each column for matrix B? Well, I only have 1, 2. Again, you can get that from counting the number of rows. So when the number of columns, 1, 2, 3 here, do not match the number of rows, 1, 2 here, you're not going to be able to do the multiplication. It's just simply not possible because you don't have enough corresponding elements to multiply. So that's why this doesn't work. Again, when you come through and do this, you go plus 1 times what? There's nothing here to do it with. So that's why the multiplication here, or you could say the product matrix AB, is not possible. Another way to answer this, some books will say undefined. Just use whatever your teacher is telling you to use. Otherwise, just pick something you're comfortable with if you're doing a self-study. All right, let's take a look at problem 3. So we're asked to find AB. So coming down here, this is our matrix A. So that's going to be a 1 by 3. Let me write this out. So our matrix A is a 1 by 3, 1 row and 3 columns. And then our matrix B is going to be a 3 by 2. Let me write that. So for matrix B, it's a 3 by 2. So 3 rows and 2 columns. Okay, so we're going to look at the columns from the first matrix, which is A, the guy on the left. So that's going to be 3. And we're going to look at the rows from the second matrix, the one on the right. So that's B, so that's also 3. So we can perform the operation because the number of columns from A matches up with the number of rows from B. And then if we want to know what's the order of the product matrix AB, well, again, you're going to look at the rows from A by the columns from B. So that means my product matrix AB will be a 1 by 2 matrix. So coming down here, again, just set this up. You can just put some empties in there and you're going to go through and say, well, if this is my row 1, column 1, well, I'm working with the first row from this matrix right here. There's only 1 row. And I'm working with the first column from this matrix right here. So let's just go through and set this up. And I'm going to do negative 6 times negative 3. Again, the first element from the first row multiplied by the first element from the first column. So negative 6 times negative 3 is going to give me 18. Then you're just going to move down. So you have negative 3 times negative 2. So that's going to be right here. That's going to be 6. And then lastly, we're going to do negative 1 times 6. So that's right here. And that's going to be negative 6. So then you're just going to go through and sum your products. So 18 plus 6 plus negative 6 is 18. Again, you can just look at 6 minus 6. That's going to be 0. So basically, you'd have 18 plus 0, which is 18. Now, all you have to do is take this 18 and just put it into that position right there. So this goes there. That's it. All right, we have one more to get. So this position is row 1, column 2. So again, I'm working with this row, and now I'm working with this column. So let's just go through and crank this out. You would have negative 6 times 6. So that's this right here. That's going to give me negative 36. Slide down. We're going to have negative 3 times negative 6. That's this right here. So that's going to be 18. Slide down. We're going to have negative 1 times negative 1. So that's this right here. And that's going to be 1. So go through and find the sum of these products. Negative 36 plus 18 is going to be negative 18. And then negative 18 plus 1 is going to be negative 17. So this right here is going to go right there. Let me get rid of this and just put a negative 17 right there. And we'll come down here where it's a little bit more neat. So this right here, this matrix with a single row, 18 and then negative 17, that's your product matrix AB. All right, for problem 4, we're asked to find AB. So coming down here, this is our matrix A and this is our matrix B. So in each case, we have a 3 by 3 matrix. So we know that we're going to be good to go. So this is a 3 by 3, and then this is also a 3 by 3. So this guy right here would match this guy right here. And then if you think about the product matrix AB, again, you want the rows here by the columns here. So it would also be a 3 by 3. All right, so coming down here, this is going to take a little bit of time because filling all these elements in one by one is going to be a little bit time consuming. So remember that we're going to end up doing row 1, column 1, and then row 1, column 2, and then row 1, column 3, so on and so forth. So this is row 1, column 1. So we're going to work with the first row here and the first column here. So we're just going to go through. So I'm going to do 9 times negative 1. So that's this guy right here. That's going to give me negative 9. I'm going to slide down and do 2 times negative 3. So that's this right here. That's going to be negative 6. Slide down once more. I'm going to do 7 times negative 4. So that's this right here. That's going to give me negative 28. Again, I'm just going to find the sum. So negative 9 minus 6 is negative 15. And then negative 15 minus 28, that's negative 43. So once again, this guy right here is just going to go right there. So I'm going to write in a negative 43. All right, continuing. Now we're going to work with row 1, column 2. So this guy right here. And essentially, we're working with this row and this column. That's all we're doing. So we're going to do 9 times 2, that's this right here, that's 18. Slide down, we're going to do 2 times 0. So 2 times 0, obviously that's 0. Slide down again, we're going to do 7 times negative 1. So that's this right here, that's going to be negative 7. So basically you would have 18 plus 0, which is 18, minus 7, which is going to be 11. So once again, this guy right here is going right there. Okay, the next guy we're going to do is work on this one. So row 1, column 3. So let me just highlight it. So we're going to be in this row and then this column. So we're going to start with 9 times 13. So that's this guy right here. Might need a calculator for that, but it's 117. Then we're going to go through and do 2 times 7. So 2 times 7 is going to be 14. And then if we do 7 times 12, that's this guy right here. That's going to be 84. So this one is probably one that you can't add in your head. But again, just have your calculator handy. So 117 plus 14, that's 131. Then plus 84, that's going to be 215. So this guy right here is going to go right there. So this is 215. All right, continuing. Now we're going to be working with the second row. So I'm going to say this is row 2 and then column 1. So I'm going to be in this row and this column. That's all I'm doing. So let's go through and crank it out. So we're going to do 5 times negative 1. So that's this right here. That's going to be negative 5. Sliding down, we're going to do 8 times negative 3. So that's this right here. That's negative 24. And then sliding down, we're going to do negative 1 times negative 4. So that's this right here. So that's going to be 4. So then negative 5 minus 24 is negative 29. And then negative 29 plus 4 is negative 25. So again, this right here is going to go right there. So negative 25. So nothing hard about the process, just really tedious, especially if you have something that's long like this. So now we're going to have row 2, column 2. So this row and this column. That's what we're working with. Okay, let's go through and crank it out. So we're going to do 5 times 2. So 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. Slide down, we're going to do 8 times 0. 8 times 0 is going to give me 0. And then we're going to do negative 1 times negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So go through and find the sum. 10 plus 0 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So this 11 right here is going to go right there. Okay, for the next one, we're going to be working with row 2, column 3. So again, this row, this column. So let's go through and crank this out. We want 5 times 13. That's this right here. This can be 65. Sliding down, we're going to want 8 times 7. So 8 times 7 is 56. Again, sliding down, you want negative 1 times 12. So negative 1 times 12 is negative 12. So go through and say that 65 plus 56, that's going to be 121. And then minus 12, that's going to be 109. So let's take this guy right here and let's put it right there. So this is going to be 109. All right, now we're on the final row down here. So you're going to be in row 3, and then we're going to do column 1 for this guy right here. So we want row 3, column 1. All right, let's go through and crank these out. So we're going to start with 0 times negative 1. So that's this right here. 0 times anything is 0. So you get a 0 there. Sliding down, you're going to have 0 times negative 3. So 0 times negative 3. Obviously, again, that's 0. And then sliding down, we're going to have negative 3 times negative 4. So here's negative 3 times negative 4. that is 12. So 0 plus 0 is 0, and then 0 plus 12 is 12. So we're going to put a 12 in right there. Okay, continuing. Now we're going to be right here. Let me just highlight this for clarity. So right there. So you're in row 3, column 2. So row 3, column 2. All right, so we're going to go through and say that we want 0 times 2. So obviously that's 0. Then sliding down, we want 0 times 0. So again, obviously that's 0. Then lastly, we want negative 3 times negative 1. So here's negative 3 times negative 1. That's going to be 3. So 0 plus 0 is 0. Then plus 3 is going to be 3. So let's go ahead and take this right here and then plug that in right there. All right, lastly, let's do this one right here. So this is row 3, column 3. So this is row 3, column 3. That's what we're working with. All right, let's go through and crank it out. So you're going to do 0 times 13. So that's obviously going to be 0. And then we're going to do 0 times 7. So again, that's going to be 0. And then lastly, we're going to do negative 3 times 12. So negative 3 times 12 is going to be negative 36. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 minus 36 is negative 36. So we're going to put this negative 36 in this final position right here. So this is going to be your product matrix AB. So just make sure that when you're doing these operations that you double check things, because especially with something of this size, it's very easy to make a mistake. All right, for problem 5, we're asked to find AB. All right, so coming down here, this is going to be your matrix A, and then this is going to be your matrix B. So first off, can we find our product? Well, this is a 3 by 3. So you have a 3 by 3 here for A, and then this guy right here is a 3 by 2. So a 3 by 2. Let me fix this 3. So the number of columns from the first matrix A is going to be 3. The number of rows from the second matrix B is also going to be 3. So this does match. So we're going to end up with, again, you take the number of rows from A and then by the number of columns from B. So you end up with a 3 by 2. So let's come down here. Again, we have this set up as a 3 by 2. So it's still a little bit time consuming for a 3 by 2, but it's not as bad as the 3 by 3 that we just did in the last problem. So let's go through. Again, this position right here is row 1, column 1. So you want row 1 here and column 1 here. So let's go through and do negative 5 times 0. So that's this right here. So that's going to be 0. Then let's slide down and we're going to do 0 times negative 3. So that's right here. So that's going to be 0. Then let's slide down. We're going to do 6 times negative 2. So that's right here. And that's going to be negative 12. So 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 minus 12 is negative 12. So we're going to take this negative 12 and we're going to put it right there. Let's put our negative 12 there. And let's come down. And now we can do the next one. So again, this right here would be row 1, column 2. So this row, this column. So let's go through and do negative 5 times negative 1. So that's this right here. That's going to be 5. Slide down. We're going to do 0 times negative 3. So 0 times negative 3 is 0. Slide down. We're going to do 6 times negative 4. So this is 6 times negative 4. That's going to be negative 24. So 5 plus 0 is 5. And then minus 24 is going to be negative 19. So again, this guy right here is going to go right there. So this is negative 19. For the next one, we're going to be looking at this spot right here, which is row 2, column 1. So I want this row and then this column. So we're going to go through and do 5 times 0, which is going to be 0. Then we're going to slide down. We're going to do negative 1 times negative 3. So that's going to be 3. And then we're going to slide down and we're going to do 1 times negative 2. So that's just going to be negative 2. So 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. So again, we're going to take this guy right here, this 1, and we're going to put it right there. Let's go through and look at this one, which is row 2, column 2. So this row and then this column. So let's go through and crank that out. So we're going to do 5 times negative 1. So this guy right here, that's going to be negative 5. Slide down, we're going to do negative 1 times negative 3. So this guy right here, that's going to be 3. Slide down, we're going to do 1 times negative 4. So that's this guy right here, that's going to be negative 4. So negative 5 plus 3 is going to be negative 2. And then negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. So let's take this guy right here and let's plug it in right there. So this right here is negative 6. All right, so now we're going to be in the third and final row. So this would be row 3, column 1. So you're working with this row and this column. So let's go through and say 2 times 0 is going to be 0. And then we have negative 1 times negative 3. So this guy right here, that's going to be 3. And then we have negative 6 times negative 2. So this guy right here, that's going to be 12. So then 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 plus 12 is 15. Let's take this right here and we're going to plug that in right there. So this is going to be 15. Okay, so the last one, this position right here is going to be row 3, column 2. So I want this row and this column. So let's go through and crank this out. Let me just leave this in for reference. So we're going to do 2 times negative 1. So that's going to be negative 2. Slide down. We're going to do negative 1 times negative 3. This right here, that's going to be 3. Slide down. We're going to do negative 6 times negative 4. So this right here, that's going to be 24. So negative 2 plus 3 is 1. 1 plus 24 is 25. So our final position, this guy right here, is going to be 25. Okay, so this is going to be your product matrix AB. All right, for problem 6, we're asked to find ABC. Now this one is a little bit more tricky, or actually I would just say it's a little bit more tedious, because you have to first multiply A by B and then take that product matrix AB and multiply it by C. There's other ways you could do that. Remember that matrix multiplication is not commutative. So you could do A multiplied by the product matrix BC, or you could do AB multiplied by C. So those will give you the same result. Just make sure that the order stays as it is. In other words, this guy right here has to stay on the left, and then this guy right here would be the product matrix BC. In this case, this product matrix AB has to stay on the left, and this guy, this matrix C, has to be on the right. So it's very important to maintain the order, because when you do matrix multiplication, generally AB is not equal to BA. So just be very, very careful when you get this situation. Okay, so the first thing you would do is figure out, is this possible to go all the way through? Now, if you think about doing AB, what you have is a 2 by 3. So A, let me write 2 by 3. And then B, that's going to be a 3 by 2. So this is a 3 by 2. Look on the inside. Does this match this? So in other words, do the columns from A match the rows from B? Yes. So we can do the operation, and then the product matrix AB would be a 2 by 2. Now that we know that AB is going to be a 2 by 2, I want you to think about, can I now multiply this by C? Well, C is a 2 by 3. So 2 by 3. Let me write it in a different way so it's more obvious. So let me put 2 by 2 like this. And let me write that C is a 2 by 3. That way you can look at the inside. So this is a 2 and this is a 2. So the columns from the product matrix AB do match up with the rows from your matrix C, and the results would be a 2 by 3. But we don't need the result of that yet, because we're going to start off with AB. So for right now, we need to know that AB is a 2 by 2. All right, so coming down here, we've set up a little 2 by 2 for our product AB. So again, I just have some empty spots in there. I'm going to start off with this position right here, which is my row 1, column 1. So I'm just going to work with this row right here and this column right here. So let's go through and crank that out. We're going to do 0 times negative 3. So that's going to be this right here. That's going to give me 0. Then we're just going to slide down. We're going to do negative 6 times negative 5. So that's going to be this right here. So that's going to give me 30. And then lastly, we're going to slide down. We're going to have 5 times negative 1. So that's going to be this right here. And that's going to give me negative 5. So we're going to go through and say 0 plus 30 is 30. Then minus 5 is going to be 25. So this guy right here, this 25, is going to go into that position right there. Let me make that a little bit better. So let me put my 25 in there. Let's go down. And now let's work on this one. So that's going to be row 1, column 2. So you're working with this first row and this second column. Okay, let's go through and crank it out. So we're going to have 0 times negative 5. So that's going to be this right here. So that's going to be 0. We're going to slide down and do negative 6 times negative 1. So that's going to be this right here. That's going to be 6. And then lastly, we're going to do 5 times negative 3. So that's this right here. And that's going to give me negative 15. 0 plus 6 is 6, and then 6 minus 15 is negative 9. So I'm going to take this negative 9, and I'm going to put it right here. So let's write in a negative 9 right there. So for this position right here, that's row 2, column 1. So this is row 2, this is column 1. And so we're going to go through and do negative 1 times negative 3. That's this right here, that's 3. Slide down, we're going to do 2 times negative 5. This right here, that's going to be negative 10. And then slide down, we're going to do negative 1 times negative 1. So that's this right here, that's going to be 1. So 3 minus 10 is negative 7. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. So let's take the negative 6 and we'll put that right there. That's what we want. Okay, continuing, we have this final position right here, which is in row 2, column 2. So row 2, column 2. So let's go through and crank it out. So negative 1 times negative 5, that's going to be 5. Slide down, we have 2 times negative 1, that's going to be negative 2. Slide down, we're going to have negative 1 times negative 3, that's going to be right there, so that's going to be 3. So 5 minus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6. So we're going to take this 6 right here, and we're going to plug it in right there. Okay, so this right here is going to be your product matrix AB. Now remember, we're not done because we have to multiply this by C. So coming down here, again, we calculated this earlier, but just for reference, this right here is a 2 by 2, and this right here is a 2 by 3. But always do this before you do any operations. You want to go all the way through to make sure that you're not wasting your time. So I already know this is possible because we checked it earlier. Remember, the number of columns here, which is 2, has to match up with the number of rows here, which is also 2. If you think about the product matrix ABC, we're going to have a 2 by 3. So the number of rows from this by the number of columns from this. So a 2 by 3 matrix is what we're looking for. So here's your 2 by 3. And again, you're just going to start with this position right here, which is row 1, column 1. So you're working with this row and this column. So let's go through and crank this out. We're going to do 25 times 0. Obviously, that's 0. We're going to slide down. We're going to do negative 9 times 1. and that's going to be negative 9. So 0 minus 9 is just negative 9, so this right here is just going to go right there. So this is going to be a negative 9. Okay, so now we're going to work with this right here, which is row 1, column 2. So this is row 1, this is column 2. Let's go through and crank out the multiplication. 25 times negative 1, that's going to be right here, that's negative 25. Then you have negative 9 times negative 2, so that's this right here, that's 18. So negative 25 plus 18 is going to give me negative 7. So this right here is going to go right there. So this would be negative 7. Okay, coming down here, we're going to work with this position right here, which is row 1, column 3. So this is row 1, this is column 3. So let's do 25 times 2. That's going to give me 50. And let's slide down and do negative 9 times 1. That right there is going to be negative 9. So 50 minus 9 is 41. So this 41 is going to go right there. Let's go to this position right here, which is row 2, column 1. So we're going to go through and do negative 6 times 0. So that's this right here. That's obviously going to be 0. Then let's do 6 times 1, and that's going to be 6. So 0 plus 6 is going to be 6. So this right here is going right there. So let's say that this is a 6. And let's come down here. So now we're going to be working with this position right here, which is going to be row 2, column 2. So this is row 2, and this is column 2. So let's crank this out. So we'd have negative 6 times negative 1. So that's this right here. So that would be 6. And then we would do 6 times negative 2. So that's this right here. And so 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. So you'd have 6 minus 12, which is negative 6. So let's put this right there. So that's my negative 6. Okay, for the final position right here, we have row 2, column 3. So row 2, column 3. Let's crank that one out. So we have negative 6 times 2. That's this right here. That's negative 12. And then we have 6 times 1. So this is 6 times 1. So that's 6. So then negative 12 plus 6 is negative 6. So this guy right here is going to go right there. So this would be a negative 6. All right, so coming down here, this is going to be your final product, ABC. So this is ABC. This right here is AB. Remember, we calculated that earlier by multiplying matrix A by matrix B, and this right here is our matrix C. All right, for problem 7, we're asked to find ABC. So coming down here, this is our matrix A, this is our matrix B, and then this is our matrix C. So the first thing you would do is figure out if this is possible. I would just start with AB. Can I find that? So A is going to be a 2 by 4. So this is 2 by 4. And then for B, this is going to be a 3 by 2. So this is not possible. You cannot find the product matrix AB. It's not going to exist because the number of columns here is 4 and the number of rows here is 3. So there's no way to make this work. Again, just think about it. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns in your matrix A. So if you think about it, that really means that you have 4 elements in each row when you think about matrix A. When you look at matrix B, again, you have 1, 2, 3 rows. So that tells you have 3 elements in each column. So in other words, if you try to multiply, let's say this row by this column, you don't have enough corresponding elements to make it work. Let's say you go through and do negative 6 times 4, and then plus 6 times 0, and then plus negative 3 times negative 2, and then plus, well, what do you do with this one? You have this guy that's the odd man out. You have 4 times what? Well, there's nothing down here, right? So that's why it doesn't work. So you can say that the product matrix AB doesn't exist. So that means that the product matrix ABC will not exist. All right, so let's just come down here. I have this written out for you. So the product ABC doesn't exist since the product AB doesn't exist. Matrix A is a 2 by 4 matrix and matrix B is a 3 by 2 matrix. For the product AB to exist, we need the number of columns in A. Remember, matrix A has 4 columns to match the number of rows in B. Matrix B has 3 rows, which is not the case. So again, you can say that it doesn't exist. You can say it's undefined. You can say it's not possible. Again, lots of ways to answer this when the scenario comes up. All right, for problem 8. We're asked to find AB. So here's our matrix A, and then here's our matrix B. So first off, is it possible? Well, so for matrix A, you have a 2 by 3. So this is a 2 by 3. Then for matrix B, it's a 3 by 2. So 3 by 2. The number of columns from A does match the number of rows from B, so we're good. And then what's the order of our product matrix AB? Again, you take the number of rows from A, and you'll say by the number of columns from B. So it's going to be a 2 by 2. Okay, so coming down here, remember, if you have variables involved, you just treat it the same way. There's nothing special here. You're just going to go through and say, well, if this right here is my row 1, column 1 for the product matrix AB, well, I'm going to work with this first row, and I'm going to work with this first column. That's all I have to do. So let's go through and say negative y times negative 5x. So that's this right here. Negative times negative is positive. Y times 5x is just 5xy. So that's this right here. Then we're going to slide down. We're going to do negative 6x times 2. So that's this right here. And so negative 6 times 2 is negative 12, and then just times x. So you get negative 12x. Then sliding down, you have negative 2 times negative 3x. Well, you would have this right here. So that's negative 2 times negative 3, that's 6, and then just times x. So you get 6x. All right, so looking at this guy right here, all you're going to do is combine like terms. So 5xy, you can't do anything with that. But if you have negative 12x plus 6x, we know that this is equal to negative 6x. So you can combine like terms there. So that's where you get this negative 6x right here from. So this would be 5xy minus 6x. So this right here is going to go right there. Now I can't fit it in there in the space that I provided, so I have it written out for us. On the next page, again, when you start working with variables, this starts getting a lot harder to fit on the page. And so let's just move down, and we're going to say now we're going to be right here, which is row 1, column 2. So you have row 1 and you have column 2. All right, let's go through and crank this out. So you can have negative y times negative 6. So it's this right here. So it's going to be positive 6y because negative times negative is positive. 6 times y is just 6y. Then we're going to move down and we're going to have negative 6x times 4. So that's this right here. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. And then you should have x that comes along for the ride. So this is just minus 24x. Then sliding down, we have negative 2 times x. So obviously that's just going to be negative 2x or minus 2x if you want to say it that way. All right, looking at this, you have 6y and then minus 24x and then minus 2x. Again, you have like terms here. So negative 24x minus 2x, you can combine those, and this would simply be negative 26x. So you'd have 6y minus 26x. So this guy right here is going to go right there. Again, it's too small of a space for me to actually write that in. So I have it set up for us already. All right, let's go through. And now we're going to look at this position right here, which is row 2, column 1. So row 2, column 1. That's what we're working with. So let's go through and do x times negative 5x. So that's this right here. Well, x times x is x squared. So that's this part. And then negative 5 will come along for the ride. So negative 5x squared is what you get. Sliding down, you have xy times 2. So this right here. And that's just 2xy. All right, lastly, we're going to do 6y times negative 3x. So that's this right here. Well, basically, 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. And then you have x times y, which is just xy. So this is minus 18xy. Again, looking at it, you can combine like terms here. Because if we look at this part right here, let me just put a little border off to the side. You have 2xy and then minus 18xy. This would be equal to 2 minus 18 is negative 16. And then xy comes along for the ride. So that's where this part right here is coming from. So basically you have negative 5x squared minus 16xy. So this right here is going to go in that position right there. And we're just going to find this final position here, which is row 2, column 2. So this is the second row. This is the second column that we're going to be working with. And so let's just go through and do x times negative 6. So it's this right here, that's negative 6x. Sliding down, we have xy times 4. So that's just going to be 4xy. And then sliding down, we're going to have 6y times x. So that's this right here. So we're going to have 6xy right there. So again, we do have some like terms that we can work with. We're going to end up with 4xy plus 6xy, which is going to be equal to 4 plus 6 is 10, and then the xy comes along for the ride. So that's why we get negative 6x plus 10xy. Once again, this right here is going to go right there. So let's come down here. We have everything set up for us. So this is going to be your product matrix AB. All right, for problem 9, we want to find AB. So this is our matrix A, and this is our matrix B. So again, can we do the operation? Well, for matrix A, this is going to be a 1 by 2. So you have 1 row and 2 columns. For matrix B, we have a 2 by 3. So 2 rows and 3 columns. So yeah, we can do the operation. The columns from A do match up with the rows from B. So we're good to go. If you want to know the order of the product matrix AB, it's going to be the rows from A by the columns from B. So it's going to be a 1 by 3 matrix. So we have that set up here. So again, just go through and crank this out. This is row 1, column 1. So this is your first row. This is your first column. Let's just go through and say that we have 4x times x squared. So you would just have 4x cubed for that, because essentially the 4 comes along for the ride. X times x squared is x cubed. Then if you think about moving down, you have xy times negative 6x. Well, this is going to be right here. And essentially your negative 6 comes along for the ride, and then x times x is x squared, and then you just have y. So this would be minus 6x squared y. So this right here is going to go right there. All right, now we're going to work on this position right here. So you're in row 1 and then column 2. We can see immediately that's going to be 0. And the reason you can see that is because you end up multiplying 4x times 0, and then you're going to end up multiplying xy times 0, and anything times 0 is 0. But let's just go through and do it for completeness. So we have 4x times 0, so it's this right here. So obviously that's 0. Let me just put that in just for clarity. And then next, you're going to have xy times 0, so that's this right here. And again, obviously that's going to be 0. So 0 plus 0 will give you 0. So this right here is going to go right there. I can actually fit it, so I'll write it in. Okay, last one. Here we're going to have this guy right there. which is in row 1, column 3. So this row, this column. Let's go through and crank that out. So you'd have 4x times 6xy. That's this right here. 4 times 6 is 24. X times x is x squared. And then you just have y that comes along for the ride. So this is 24x squared y. Then let's slide down. You have xy times negative 3. So that's this right here. That's just going to give you negative 3xy. So this right here, this 24x squared y minus 3xy would go right there. And this is our product matrix AB. All right, for problem 10, we're asked to find ABC. All right, so here's our matrix A, here's our matrix B, here's our matrix C. So again, go all the way through the process. In this case, you can do AB, right? So you can find that product matrix, but you're going to fail when you try to find ABC. In other words, if you look at A and you look at B, well, this is a 2 by 3. This is a 2 by 3. And then this is a 3 by 2. 3 by 2. So when you get a problem like this, it might work out to where you can do the first one. So you can find AB, it's going to be a 2 by 2. Because again, you're working with rows from this by columns from this. So your product matrix AB is going to be a 2 by 2. So let me write that out. So AB is a 2 by 2. What about this matrix C? Well, this is a 4 by 2. Does this work? No. This is a 2 and this is a 4. So those do not match. So this product ABC is not going to exist. So coming down here, I have this written up for us. So the product ABC doesn't exist. Matrix A is a 2 by 3 matrix and matrix B is a 3 by 2 matrix. This means that our product matrix AB is a 2 by 2 matrix, as I just showed you. The problem comes from trying to multiply the product matrix AB by matrix C. Again, the product matrix AB is a 2 by 2 matrix, while the matrix C is going to be a 4 by 2 matrix. For the final product ABC to exist, we need the number of columns in the product matrix AB, which is 2, to match the number of rows in matrix C, which is going to be 4, so that's not going to be the case. So again, we could say this product ABC doesn't exist, we could say it's undefined, we could say it's not possible. Just pick whatever you want to use for this scenario.